This is episode 1 of Soul to Soul podcast. I'm your host, Kaylee Marie, and this is my co-host and amazing mother, Carol Ann. We are Chicagoland mediums just trying to share our experience, our stories, and just give you a little bit of a glimpse of what it's like to be a medium, have an experience with a medium, but most importantly, learn how to connect with your loved ones on the other side and continue that bond and that relationship that is forever lasting. So starting the first episode today, I think it's only perfect to share the first story that came this morning with Carol's Dunkin' coffee that she gets every morning. Your number on it was 313, which is the day that you had your stroke back in 2010. And I feel like it's only fitting and the perfect synchronicity to start episode 1 because that's exactly where we wanted to start by sharing today, because I really feel like the stroke is really what jump-started your work as a medium and what jump-started my work as a medium. I feel like our stories are very much intertwined. I know I wouldn't be doing the work that I do if it wasn't for you and your experience and the way that we have grown together. So I think we should just talk a little bit about the stroke, what it was like, and do you feel like the stroke was like what they say an awakening for you? Because you hear all these stories about these near-death experiences, and nobody really knows what it's like or what happens, and it's different for everybody. So how was that experience for you? Did you go somewhere? Do you remember anything spiritual happening in that moment?
Yes, definitely. So that morning of the stroke, we were at my brother's bar for a Irish parade party, and it was the first Southside No Parade party. So we were all together as a family, and so as the day went on, I mean, we were just there about an hour, and I felt a blow to the back of my head. They would go on to tell me it was a subarachnoid brain hemorrhage, but I had been living in a lot of stress the year prior, leading up into this day. And my doctor, our family doctor, would tell me that you need to medicate or meditate. So that would have stuck with me. So then fast forward in the hospital, I remember being in the intensive care unit. They gave me morphine and everything because they said any amount of blood on the brain was excruciating. So I had a lot of head pain, and they were just watching me. And so on the morphine, I don't know. I've never been on morphine before, so I don't know what it actually does. But for me, it was a very real experience. I was in a circle of all these colors, and I was talking to my husband and my brother who was there, come into my circle. And I guess I was saying different things like that, like, do you see the colors and all this stuff? And I was just so happy. What I remember is being like really happy, but it was kind of like an out-of-body experience in general, because I was really happy and excited, but my physical body was hurting. Like I had a cold rag on my head, so I was having these physical symptoms, but I was feeling happy.
So before the stroke, did you remember having any spiritual experience before? Did you ever meditate, or did you have any connection to like the spirit world or anything before the stroke, or do you feel like the stroke was really the beginning of it all?
I did have experiences for sure, but nothing to the extent of, no, I did not meditate or anything like that prior. My brother passed away when I was 2.5, Eddie. So he was the main person I would pray to, I would talk to, I would ask guidance from, and I had this experience the biggest one I could remember at a medium's office, I was outside the door and I asked my brother Eddie something, and he, without a doubt, gave me the answer. So I had that, but I realize now looking back, I always asked him. I always said this or that, like same thing I do now, but now maybe I just know I believe it a little more, where before I must have believed it, but I just not to the extent.
Needed that proof. But I think too, that's what's so crazy and my favorite parts about our work and like what we do, because your loved ones will show up with whatever you're asking for and the proof that you need so that you really can feel them. It's just up to us to trust it when we receive that proof. But going back to just the stroke and following the stroke. So after you had went through that healing process,
well, in the hospital still, I was there a week, so I would have had different experiences pop up. Like I said, I was really happy but sick at the same time. So I would see my family members coming in, and it really looked like on their faces that I was dying. Like that's the real feeling I had. And I felt like they were keeping something from me because I was so darn happy inside, but I'm sure I didn't look like that. But I was like, what are you guys keeping from me? What did the doctor say? And there was a lot of unknowns at the time. So they were telling me the truth, but, so there was unknown where the blood came from and whatever, they never did find the cause of it. I knew it was stress, but, like I said, so I felt like I was very psychic. Now, again, looking back, I just was able to tune into people's feelings. My son, he was 18 years old, and he drove up to Rush Hospital, and I remember him putting the cold rag on my head, like wetting it, putting it on my head, holding my throw up bucket. And I was laying there and thinking, oh my God, like I should be there for him. Like roles are reversed. He's nurturing, he's loving me, he's scared, he's all these things. And I just wanted to help him feel better. But at the same time, this is where I felt like I was tuning into like psychically. At the same time, I knew that this experience was for him, just like it was for me. And they were separate experiences. And I needed to receive from him, even though he was 18 and, So, but in that moment, when did you realize that that's the exact experience that both of your souls needed? Was it looking back afterwards, or were you just that in tune in that moment? In that moment, I felt like I knew it. It was really, I feel like I was saying, an out of body, I feel like these experiences started happening immediately.
And do you remember, were you always that like sensitive beforehand?
I was always sensitive, but not to this extent where I didn't question it. It's weird because I question a lot, I need proof of everything. Yeah. So I do question a lot, but when I was in there, my, people would have called it the morphine or whatever, but I feel like there was it was 7 days in the hospital, and it just felt like they were really, I don't know, like really big experiences in such a short amount of time.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, because I remember like while I was growing up, I feel like my sensitivity to the energy and to people's feelings and just everything around me, I feel like just happened so naturally. But I feel like that's because you were already at that point in your journey where you were understanding it more, so that when you saw it coming out in me, and whether it was like a spirit that I was seeing or just my emotional like sensitivity to things, I feel like personally it was always very like encouraged and opened, and emotions were something that were always talked about, I feel like, and we were always trying to understand or go deeper into it, I feel like. So for me, it wasn't anything that I really had to like learn or think about, but I feel like that's because it was already like where you were already having this understanding of it in your journey. So, but after the stroke, then what were like the following months like for you then? Did you really go deeper into your journey with spirit, or when did you really start working as a medium?
Well, I would say it was a good year of recovery, even longer, but I feel like again, kind of living split now that I think about it, split lives, because I was so excited to, like, I knew I had this bigger purpose, this bigger mission, which I had no idea what at the time. So I had this like, renewed love for life in general. Like I just could stare at trees, but to this day, I still could stare at trees all day. But 5 weeks after, it would stick in my head, meditate or medicate, what my doctor said. And I choose not to take medication at the time. So I was looking I actually Googled meditation. What is it? And I went on YouTube and what was I going to say? 5 weeks after, I remember I went to this healing church, which was, they did Reiki healing. And then at the end of the service, they would bring through loved ones who have crossed over. And my friend told me about it. But backing up, when I came home, I remember I couldn't walk after I came home from the hospital this one day, and I had a physical therapist come and everything. And I was in excruciating pain. They said it was the blood draining, more than likely draining down the spinal column, but I was in a lot of pain. I couldn't sleep, just a lot of physical pain. And I remember going to bed that night telling my husband that that I may die tonight, and he thought I was crazy, still talking crazy or whatever. And I said, no, I need you to know this. And so I just kind of explained what I wanted him to say to the kids and everything. And he just literally thought I was ridiculous. And I said, Stan, you cannot, I couldn't endure the physical pain that I felt. Things were dying down, but then I was physically. And I remember having this light bulb moment, or this enlightenment, kind of like what I was sharing with the psychic feelings. Like I just started having a knowing. That's probably more like it. Yeah. And all of a sudden I felt, because I would always imagine what it would like, I don't know why I've had many people close to me pass away, but, I would think like, well, what if like my mom, like, that was something that I proceed to be very, very hard for me. And in that moment, I just realized that the ultimate like act of loving someone is to allow them to have their journey and allow them to, so I had it pictured in my head that, if my mom were to pass away, or anyone very close to me were to pass away, I would tell them it's okay to go. And it's weird because you see that in the movies, and I've heard people talk about that, but I thought to myself, I will never let my mom go. Like I would never be one of those people that say, okay, you can go now. And before that even happened in real life, I just had this whole on scenario because I thought I was dying that night. So I thought, no, it's okay to let me go. Like I assured my husband, I'm really okay. I am good. I am fulfilled. I was feeling love. I just wanted to make sure everyone else was okay. So, so that was that. And then I woke up the next day and I felt better. I was still in pain, but I actually, could walk. So,
do you feel like having that conversation was even a little bit of like an emotional release, because you just said like you felt better in the morning, you were still there, you were still alive, and all of that. So I was just wondering, like, what do you think was like the reason that you felt the need to let that go? Do you feel like it was more of like an emotional thing, or stuff that you were carrying within you that...
I don't know. I never actually even thought about it like that. I really thought I was going to die that night. Like I was pretty sure. And I just wanted to let people know that I was really okay.
Yeah.
And
but I think that is one of the biggest things when we all have a loved one that is either has passed away or is ill. I feel like that's the one thing that we all want to know is, are they okay? Are they safe? Are they content? Are they at peace? Is really the biggest thing, especially that I see in my sessions. It's one of the most asked questions. And I feel like part of that experience somehow ties into just the way everything has played out thus far, for sure.
And I think the same thing. Like, I really feel like I was in spirit world when I had the stroke, whether it's when I was sleeping, whether when I had the morphine, but I feel like I was literally touched by God, and I knew waking up in the hospital, I knew I would never be the same. So it was this overwhelming feeling of love. And that's why like you said, that is the number one question. People want to know if they're okay, or and it was weird now, again, talking about it and looking back, how I wanted him to express that to my kids. Like, no, I'm in physical pain, but I was so okay to die. Like, I made peace with myself dying for some reason that night. And when I woke up, I was like, well, guess I have some work to do still.
Yeah. But that could be too, because your brother, my uncle, did pass away when you were only 2 years old. So I'm sure there was still some of that there. Like, why did that have to happen? What does that even mean? So that was probably part of that healing coming out. Like, no, death is okay. It's not just a bad thing, or it doesn't mean the ending, even if you didn't totally realize it then. But I'm sure there was I feel like that was probably some of the emotional release from having that conversation, because you had so much unanswered stuff from your brother's passing when you were little, where I feel like that was kind of the start of you starting to understand what it really meant.
Yeah, I think so, for sure.
But so I think you were talking about Healing Church. I know I went there a couple times. I was only 10 years old, but how was your first experience? Is that what got you into mediumship?
Yes. So the minister was a medium, and people in the congregation, or whatever it's called, people would often talk about being a student of hers. And so I just asked a lot of questions. And then within a month, I think it was, me and my sister decided to take this class. It was, if you want more balance in your life and more something, but she didn't say it was a mediumship class, or at least that's not what I just knew I wanted to be there. So it was a mediumship class, and it was in person. And by now I was already meditating on my own, because I learned on YouTube. And going through the class, you were probably 10, like you said. You were 9 when I had this. So no, you were 9 actually. And so then I would meditate in my closet. I had this walk-in closet, and it was our homework and everything to meditate. So, and my teacher told me that you were going to ask questions and, possibly want to meditate. And she told me some things. And, so this one day you asked me to meditate with me, and I thought, oh boy, it's happening. Like, just like my teacher said. So, So
I feel like that is probably one of the only meditation experiences I remember from childhood, because I really don't remember that much, but I do remember asking you, just out of pure curiosity, why you were sitting on the floor in the closet with this music playing. And you explained, like, I'm meditating, it's for your brain to help you feel good. So I do remember being very, very curious with that. And I can share that first experience because that was my very first time meditating. And I remember when I went into it, I was totally, like, it was so easy for me to just surrender and shut my mind down, which is crazy because I wish it was that easy to do now. But it was, it was like this. The second I, like, closed my eyes and took a deep breath, I don't know how I knew what to do or how to just let go, but it happened so easily, to the point where I remember I, like, started moving with the energy that I was feeling, because whatever I was seeing in that moment, I think it was like a priest and my uncle, but they were like, we were all moving in a circle, and I remember my body was, like, slightly moving in a circle, which I think is what freaked you out, to shut down the whole thing that time. But I just remember being so in tune and, like, so go with the flow with whatever was happening to share with you. I had no clue that you hadn't experienced anything like this before. Mm-hmm. I felt like it was so normal and it was so cool and fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had experiences, but I was not able to physically see my loved ones. And and again, not that quick. Like, by now I was already meditating a few months, like, diligently, like, every day, and it was happening with me at the same time. But like, I heard, and we could talk about that after, but my very first connection was my brother Eddie that came, and it was through clairaudience. I heard him. And for you, like, that's exactly how it was. It was immediately. So as soon as I set the timer for 10 minutes, because I thought, well, you're only 9, you know. So I set it for 10 minutes. I explained to you that, you know, for any reason, if you want to get out of meditation, just, you know, sit there and breathe or whatever. And then all of a sudden, I was going really into it myself. And all of a sudden I felt you moving, and I opened my eyes and I thought, oh my God, what the hell is happening? Like, it did freak me out. I set the timer off so it would start beeping, and then you told me I saw Uncle PJ, I saw a priest, and we were just kind of like going in a circle, and just like what you were doing. And so what I didn't realize, because I was freaked out, because my teacher told me, you don't touch people in meditation, you don't whatever at the time. So I didn't know all these rules. And so I couldn't wait to get back to class. And I told her what happened. And she said, well, don't let her, you know, move. And I didn't really understand that. Again, I was kind of nervous about that. But she said, there's no need to sway or like move. I was like, okay, I don't know why she said that at the time. But what she told me when I said she saw my brother, she said, like, I didn't totally know if it was,
true.
Really?
Yeah. Believe me.
I didn't want to say that. Yes. Until, my teacher, who, you know, I just believed what she was saying. Yeah. So I went to her and I said, you know, she saw my brother and a priest, like, that was just random. And she's like, Carol, go get your papers from last week. I was like, oh God, like, what does that mean? And she said, did we not just go through this last week? So last week in class, she put together for the class a pamphlet of just the way Spirit speaks, basically. So it's a list of of symbols, signs and symbols of to understand, like if spirit shows you this, it could mean this, that type of thing. So she said, go down to brother. And I went down to brother, and there was brother. There was a picture of a priest. And then there was, so she said, so it could be like a brother, like a priest, people call brother, or it could be like, you know, your brother, someone's brother. And I'm like, so she really did see my brother. And she said, oh, she saw him.
Yeah.
And she said, but don't let her move anymore. I was like, okay. I didn't. So I was just like, oh my God, I can't even believe this. And then what would go on to happen was, then I wanted to put you to the test in a way, because I was like, wait a second, how the heck? That was her first time. She knows nothing about, like, you know, she's 9 years old. How did that happen? So,
but I feel like too, that is what we learn is the language of spirit, because, and I feel like something that I learned, because before I really got into this work as a medium, and I would just like watch you and listen to your stories and all of that, I never really understood how you're actually receiving the information. And it's one thing I learned is that it's not an HD crystal clear picture. It's these little flashes or feelings, or it's all so subtle, but it's the sensitivity that we have to it that we learn to grow so that we can like acknowledge it and show like, and then it ends up being some piece of evidence or whatever to connect to their loved one. But the signs and the symbols is the language of spirit, and you can build your own personal bank or language with spirit with your own loved ones, so that you know what it means. For me, like I just added another thing to my bank with spirit for like when I see a rose. To me, it means like there's a mother energy coming forward. So it doesn't have to have any physical connection, but if you tell spirit, this is what this means, if you tell your loved one, I want this to mean this,
exactly,
then they're going to make that's how they're going to continue to show up for you.
And that was the pamphlet. And that's the synchronicities, the full circle, is because spirit knew that you would have been in that closet that day meditating with me, and they knew that I would have took it back to my teacher, who would have showed me the pamphlet that we just learned, signs and symbols. And but also, like you mentioned sensitivity, and I think that that's and also important, and yes, it was welcomed. You had an open, I believe, because of me being on the journey, your environment surrounding mediumship was open, because when you would meditate, you didn't meditate that much. You would usually ask, or I would ask you. So it wasn't that much. And I wasn't pushing anything except, you know, for fun. Like we did want messages from you because we knew we had a direct connect. But this one time I asked you to meditate real quick, and for my boss, and I didn't tell you anything. You were very young. You didn't know anything. And I knew my boss contacted me that morning to tell me that her mother passed away. She was taking care of her. She was sick. And I said, I just wanted, you know, to see if they can show you anything about my boss's, you know, mom or whatever. And so when you went in meditation, I could remember exactly where we were.
I remember resisting it a lot too, to tell you the truth.
And that was probably after
feel like doing it, but
yes. You seemed to, I felt like you had some sort of pressure or something. And I was like, there's no pressure, but can you go in and do this? So it probably was my overwhelming trust in you, or like, oh my God, like, cause I believed in you from day one myself, you know, I had to work on that. But, so I remember when you went in, to meditation in this moment, and I sat out next to you, and I was going to write down everything, whatever you would say.
Mm.
And what you saw was a hospital bed that was made with a white sheet. And you said, I don't know, it's empty and it's made. And I didn't tell you, or I don't remember if I told you details, but I was like, oh my God, like she just passed away like an hour ago.
Mm-hmm.
And, so that was one thing, but also what I was going to say about the sensitivity is you would get nauseous. You would get sick if it was longer than 10 minutes. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I kind of do remember
Yeah.
that. And I feel like it happens to me still a little bit now when, like, if I'm in a Reiki session for a long time, or if I'm going over, or if the energy is just really deep, I feel it in my physical body. Like, I got to get out of here. Like, I can't breathe. Which is really interesting how the energy affects your physical body. But I feel like this is all something, because you hear people, they ask the question too, like, is everybody a medium? Can you learn this? And I really feel like it's just learning to be sensitive. I feel like the spirit world, our loved ones are all around us. They're just vibrating at this different frequency, this other dimension, whatever you want to call it, but it's all happening simultaneously. It's just a level that our physical human 3D eyes can't see. And I feel like when we learn to tune into our energy that we naturally have, and we learn the sensitivity with it, like, I feel like that sensitivity is something that can be learned. It might be harder for some people because of the things that they've gone through and the lessons that they have learned, or the emotional pain or trauma that they hold on to. There might be a little bit more work there, but I really do think the sensitivity is something that can be practiced and, like, grown so that you can connect to it more, so that connecting to your loved ones is that much easier, or the spirit world.
I believe that too, because it's another thing that stuck out to me while I started meditating. My mom would always tell me, because when my brother Eddie passed away, like I said, I would talk about him often, and into my adult years, he was the only one I talked to, like, all the time. And I was on search, I went to mediums my whole teenage through my 20s in search of a connection with him. But my mom, when I was younger, and it stuck, I don't feel like I have a lot of memories from my younger years, but one thing she did tell me was, because I would say, well, where is he? Why can't I see him? And because she would tell me, like, oh, he's all around, he's with us or whatever. And I'm like, but I don't see him. I'm like, why do you keep telling me that? And she said, Carol, it's the spirit. His spirit is with us. And I think she was more talking textbook. Yeah. Well, she was, because it wouldn't be until when this happened in our family, I had the stroke, like, I feel like she became so open, and she learned a lot through this movement of all this that came of it. And but back then, she did tell me that our physical bodies could not handle seeing him appear in front of us. She said you would physically have a heart attack. And I always remember that. And I thought, well, that's weird. That could be one limiting belief if you think about it. So now I'm in meditation trying to connect with my brother, but I'll have a heart attack if I see him. So that's one thing. But the other thing is, she wasn't really wrong, because it was a sensitivity. And I grew to learn this on my own then through meditation, but I was like, wow. And it was to accept the sensitivity that we are born with, that we all have, but it has been pushed away from us. So what was I saying about my mom having a heart? So the truth was, or she was speaking truth and didn't even know it. He really was here. And we, it's not that we want to see them walking around, but some people could easier, because they maybe never had that strong belief or whatever. But yes, there's a sensitivity that.
And I want to backtrack just a little bit, because during all of this time, you're a couple weeks into your mediumship class, we lost PJ, my uncle PJ. which for me was my first passing of a loved one. But even looking back at that time, I don't even think I really understood what death was, similar to when you were 2 years old, but I was 10. But I remember, like, I didn't fully comprehend that he was gone. Or I remember when I was told that he passed away, there wasn't any specific, I didn't understand the feeling of grief in that moment. I didn't feel it. I didn't really know it. I feel like that didn't happen until his funeral, because it was the first funeral that I went to. And going to see him, I feel like that's when that feeling of grief really hit me at just 10 years old, and trying to figure out what that was, or what that feeling was, and understanding it. But how was that experience then for you? Because at this point, when he did pass, you had a little bit of an understanding of mediumship and of the spirit world, right? It was like all at the same time.
I was in level 2. It was all at the same time. Yeah, I was 11 months after my stroke, and I had an awareness. I was already connecting, and when I got the news that he passed away, I was mad at God. I was walking away from mediumship because I thought it was because I had this stroke and I had a bigger purpose and all this stuff. And then I was like, oh, this was to handle my brother's passing. No, I'm not doing this again. So I was very mad. I was quitting everything. And, yeah. And
that
then
didn't turn out
and
how
then
you
within a few minutes, I quickly tried to take all that back and say, okay, I don't want to, quit, because this is my only connection into PJ. So now it turned to, if this shit's real, he is going to show me. And he went on to be literally my greatest teacher that the following couple of years. I think I remember I shared with you, I have 5 kids, and it was very hard. It was very hard. I journaled. I wrote to him every single day. I didn't want to get out of bed unless I really had to. I would sleep in hours and try to, I'm just not feeling well today, or whatever it is. But really, I was felt like I was dying again, and that my whole world just stopped. And I loved that he started connecting immediately, but grief, as what you're saying, I couldn't process everything I had to process in such a small amount of time. So one day I decided, like, I could die up here and just literally give everything up, or I can make a choice to go downstairs and to face the grief, I think is what I was speaking of. And then I decided to come down. And once I did that, I just was on a search more than ever before. And I think it was a search for, is this real? Which I did know it was real, but can he connect to me? Can I have this relationship with my brother? I cannot lose my brother. And, yes, he did. He went above and beyond. And,
so what were those first couple signs from him? Like, what really made you like, holy shit, he's here.
There was really so many, but I gave him a number 222. So that's because I couldn't wait for, what is he going to give me? Can I see? So I was like, look, I'm giving you an angel number, and this is your calling card. And, so I remember going to Dunkin' Donuts. And at the time, they didn't have the numbers on the cup, but they were on the screen. And I was in the car with my brother-in-law, who was telling me about one of PJ's favorite songs. And I didn't believe him entirely, because I was like, how come I don't know that? He said, I'm telling you it is. And I was like, that's weird that I just never knew that. And then we pull up at Dunkin', and the bill was $222. I said, oh my God, it is his favorite song. And he said, he's like, I told you, like he didn't know I didn't believe him at the time. And I said, oh my God. So that was like one of the main first ones. But then we went on to, we had a sheriff car right around the corner from our house that was 222. And my sister Katie had a sheriff car around her house. Hers was a black unmarked one and 222. And mine was a regular white sheriff car. And then my sister Peggy had, there was a car that her neighbor that parked across the street from her, 222, in her parking lot. And then my brother Danny, he moved into a new home right around the same time. And the guy across the street owns a business, and his truck that still to this day we see all the time is 222. So, so I, was telling the family, and everyone is grieving in their own way. And, but I started getting really excited now because I was like, holy shit, the shit's real. But more importantly, like I am connecting with people, like PJ's still here. Like I had that feeling of the stroke. Like I was in my own little, world because my family were really going through their own grief in other ways, and I felt like this was my lifeline. Like so I would tell people 222, and they were to and they went on to accept it, but in the beginning I think it was a little kind of, they're like, okay, PJ's 222. And then another big thing with that number was the autopsy. It came back extra long. It was 6 months later after his passing, and my sister knew someone who worked there or whatever, but we got papers and copies, and it was case number 222 on every single page. And I'm like, I told you, BJ. So
what was the family's reaction after they saw that? Were they like, okay?
Nobody's been as excited
insane.
as I have been. I don't think.
But even what are the chances? Every time I think about that story, it still blows my mind, because 6 months later, after you gave him the number, after he showed up in front of everybody's houses in the same week, and then he was gonna say like, here it is again.
Well, the car and the everybody house thing, that would unfold in probably even a year or two. I don't really know the timeline of that, but it was all around the same time because I pointed it out. Of course, I was like, oh my God, this comes my sister's Katie's house. I'm like, this car sits there around the corner all the time. Yeah. And so I just would to notice that PJ was all around.
So I guess we can go forward a little bit back to where we were with the mediumship class, and you just developing your gift more. When did you start working as a medium? Because I think I took my first class well into like you already learning it and doing it at home, but I took my first class with one of your friends online who was practicing teaching it, and I think I was still in middle school, so I was like 14 or 15, and it was connecting. It was psychic, and it was mediumship and cards and connecting to loved ones, and learning all that. I remember I still had a little bit of like fear in me but it was the fear of like, I don't want to be wrong, or I don't want to say the same thing. I remember still feeling some of that. Cause I remember when they tried to get me to do my first reading with like a stranger when I was 14, I canceled it or came up with an excuse, and then however it happened, it never ended up happening. And I, from there, actually went away from meditating and all of this work for a few years. But in the back of my head, I do know, and I do remember that it was always something that I knew I was always going to do. It was more of that feeling like, well, I just don't want to do it right now. Like, if I know I'm going to do this for the rest of my life, then let me like be a kid or just go to school and not have to worry about this. But I do remember it wasn't like I didn't want to do it. It was just, there was always this deeper knowing within me that I don't really know how to explain, but I always knew I was going to come back to it. And I remember it was like senior year of high school. At this point, you were very much always asking me when I'm gonna go into it. I was just
sitting here thinking like how I also remember giving you some space too. So that's funny because because I did want to encourage you. And I guess because for me, when I came out as a medium, I didn't really have a lot of support around me. Family or like friends, I have friends to this day that has never had a reading. Yeah. But so I didn't have that support that I needed, and I just wanted you to know. So I remember telling you, like, you don't have to not, but you are so gifted, like, because it was, in front of my eyes. And I knew too, well, early on when I was doing this, that it wasn't just about me. I knew immediately you were seeing spirit. My other daughter was seeing spirit. And, I knew that even if I just had to have a greater understanding to support you guys. So I didn't know where it was all going, but I did have that knowing too.
But I do know in that time of me shying away from actually meditating or doing the work between like 15 and 18, I was still learning and getting deep into understanding myself, because I had gone through, just teenage stuff. And I remember looking up and watching videos to fall asleep every night on healing the emotional body and learning the emotional body, and then learning what trauma is, and learning how to heal or how to understand your emotions or how to give yourself a space to feel, and all of this stuff. It was like a constant. I hundreds of videos I must have watched, and now thinking about it, I feel like that's exactly how it needed to happen for me to take my first real course and really get into it. Like, I needed those couple years, regardless of my age. I needed that time to understand the physical body first, and how to help people heal, and to understand their emotions, and to heal their grief, like moving forward, which I feel like has affected the way my readings are so much now, because I spent so much time trying to understand myself and everything. But I think at 18, and I still laugh when I think about this, and I think it came at the time where you were giving me space. You had quieted down a little bit, and that's kind of when
I wanted to say, back. I think that's so important that you said that, because what you were saying about you needed that time, because I could relate it to being a couple months up in the bed. You know, I could beat myself up after PJ passed away, and I have 5 kids down there, and I'm here, but I'm not here. And I did go there in my head a lot, but also I had this bigger knowing, and I feel like that's what you had, knowing that I also had to be there in the bed. So you can't, there is no jumping over emotions and stuff like that. And it reminds me of, I've taken many classes just because I love I love to grow as much as I can within my own journey, my own personal journey. So I love challenging myself. So I put myself in a lot of classes, and I remember this one class. I love the teacher and respect him a lot, and the homework was meditation and something else. And there was a period that I didn't meditate. I would, say prayers. I would calm my mind down. So, different forms of meditation, but not my sitting in the power meditation. That happened the first 6 years from my stroke. 6 years, never missed a moment of sitting in the power meditation. So, but at the time, I also loved this teacher, and I always do the homework, I guess you could say. Yeah. But I had this higher knowing that I don't know why, but I didn't. So anyways, I was just going back to that. I think that's the knowing, again, that we all have, that we shouldn't, or we tend to question it, but we do have to. I had to fully be in my experience at the time, my life experience. And just like you know, for a few years. And
I feel like that's something too, even now, like still looking back, it's something that still helps me when some of these messages come through with my clients in one-on-one readings now. I feel like a lot of the messages are about helping my client tune into their emotions and understand their emotions, because I've always said, as much as having a mediumship reading is to connect with your loved one and to know they're with you, it's so much more for you and for your healing, not just to know that they're with you, but for you to let go of anything that you've been holding on to help you move forward. And I think, just like you said, going through that time and knowing and being able to give ourselves that space and that grace to feel without these expectations, most importantly, without the judgment of ourselves about what we should be doing or where we should be at. I feel like that's the most important thing when it comes to feeling emotions, is to let go of the judgment behind it or the trying to figure it out and trying to understand it, because all of that stops you from actually feeling the emotion to its degree that it's needed in order for it to be released, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
But so going into after PJ's passing and everything, then how do you feel like that has shaped your mediumship or your readings or your work? Because I do feel like just who you are, and from the stories that I've heard, just even while you were growing up, there's something about your readings that you do have this crazy like evidence, like, but it's hard evidence that I feel like most people don't usually get, but I feel like that's because of who you are, that proof that you needed, even though you had this understanding with it. You still asked for that proof, and I feel like it's more not about the proof, but the support. Like, yes, they're here. Like, you trust it, but like they have to show you at the same time. And I feel like what's different from my readings from that, because I never had to go through any of those lessons of like support or proof or that knowing, because I always had that support. And so with my readings now, I do get the evidence, but I feel like I get a lot of messages too that are more for the client, to help them in their emotions and what they need to do next to help them moving forward. So I just think it's interesting how, as much as our journeys are connected, our readings are still very different, and it's all like that way because of the journeys that we both have had individually.
Yeah. And why I was laughing is because I forgot what you said. Hard. I was like, yeah, hard, like judgment.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was some, I definitely see that way. But as far as like PJ passing, the hardness, a lot of it is on myself, to be honest. And so it's not with spirit world, it's the hardness and judgment on myself.
But I feel like that connects back to like that support and like feeling supported from them. Like, that's why you need them to show up for you. It's not because you don't believe them. It's that feeling of support that it gives you when you see that.
And I
that
think
I
do agree with that, because I think, again, not having a lot of support in the physical realm, and even now looking back, and even still to this day, spirit has never left me. And I am so grateful. Like, I literally could cry when I think about going through life, just some really hard, tough times. And where maybe people can't always be there for you in the way you need them, but spirit has always been. And that's why I think it goes back to when I was a little girl, and you know, the memories I don't have, but just the knowing. But when PJ passed away, I was in level 2 mediumship class at the time, and I went on to also do Reiki. And a lady in class told me she does Reiki. I wasn't sure what it was, and I went to her house, and I would have gone every day, every Monday for a year, not just for me, but everyone I told I would bring there, and I would see the messages coming through. And me just wanting more and more and more, like I need, I had a focus that I wanted to connect to my brother beyond a doubt. I wanted crazy proof that it was me connecting with PJ. And it had nothing to do with it. I did not know that I was going to do readings, or I was going to become, step into my mediumship. It was really all for me. And it was like a since Eddie, you brought that up, like, I wonder if these emotions, yes, it was so directly connected to Eddie's passing, now another brother passing. And, we talk about synchronicities all the time, and perfect timing and divine timing. And PJ, his birthday is 12/8, which is December 8th. And Eddie passed away on January 28th. So 128. They both, you have a tattoo on you.
I got this when I was 17. So it was before I got this, started into this work or anything. And just the connection that we have always had to our loved ones on the other side, and how much it's always meant to us to really understand them and to feel them and to connect with them. But I want to just go back to what you were saying about the support that you feel from your loved ones and from spirit, because I feel like, again, that is just one of the main things that people want to know is, are they with me? Are they watching over me? And when we can learn to connect with our loved ones on the other side, which we can definitely go deeper into this in the next episode, but when we learn to connect with our own loved ones on the other side and give them these signs or these symbols, and to trust that they really are with us, our loved ones are only ever wanting to support us and let us know that they're with us in any way that they can to help us on our journey moving forward. But we can definitely move into that.
And that's such like a good metaphor for even life. Like, the support that we need from each other, and support, like what support actually,
does, and
can
how
do
it
for
helps
people.
You exactly move forward, for sure. But it was fun sitting with you today and reminiscing. And I feel like even just thinking back into the past now at this point in our lives, it helps us to like realize so many other things that we didn't realize the first time around. So I can't wait to sit down with you next week to see what comes of it.
Yes. Well, thank you.